Mr. Michael Parkhurst. Michael, thanks for coming on.
Gents, my apologies for my tardiness tonight.
It's okay.
No worries.
Busy man.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are y'all doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
A busy few days, I'm sure, for you all, trying to cover Atlanta United.
Just a little busy.
Just watching YouTube clips after YouTube clips or what?
Right.
Scouting them out, man.
Yeah, scouting them out. But yeah, Mike, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate your time. I know there's a lot of excitement by our viewers and listeners knowing that you'd be coming on. So yeah, thanks for stopping by for just a little bit. Before we get any further, let us know what you're up to. What's going on in your world these days? What's keeping you busy?
A few things. Still got Beyond Goals mentoring going with Greg, and that's been a blast. We've got a broader partnership with Atlanta United Academy this year, thanks to Truist, and so we're excited to work more with their athletes and teams and parents. So that'll be awesome. And then still helping out Rippleworks, a tech company, and then got the USL franchise up in Rhode Island getting going next year. So just helping Kano, our head coach, put together the team there and figure things out so we can hopefully win some games next year.
So first of all, and I got to give, because this is different than the last time we spoke. The last time I gotta give you a shout out because you were our first guest on the Twitter Spaces show that we did last year. That's actually kind of how this got started. And
nice.
So I appreciate it, by the way. So yeah, I wanted to talk like just really quick, like Rhode Island, and then obviously this Atlanta podcast, kind of like more detailed about what are y'all doing on top of what you were already doing with Beyond Goals, and then just Rhode Island, like you got a whole bunch of fans that are ready to just add on Rhode Island, I think, to their group of scarves and everything in the back. So like what's going on with it?
Yeah, I'll start with Rhode Island. Yeah, since we last talked, obviously hired Connor Smith as our GM and head coach. We got him from Birmingham. I actually played with Connor up in New England. When I started off my career, we were rookies together. And yeah, he's a great dude and a good person, well respected. So we feel really good about having him at the Realm. Got the stadium being built up there, but just headache after headache trying to get a stadium built right now, or anything built right these days, but and trying to get financing for it as well. So unfortunately won't be ready for next year. So we'll be at a temporary facility at a college which is not unfamiliar territory for any new franchise, really, including Atlanta United. So we got that, and then we'll be in the stadium year 2. So yeah, we are putting together the team now. Haven't signed a first player yet, but are out scouting and hitting the free agency market within USL for sure, and scouting MLS Next Pro teams and academies and all that. So yeah, that's exciting. And then yeah, Greg and I with Atlanta United's Academy, we'll be speaking more to the teams in the beginning of the season. We'll be trying to work more with individuals throughout their academy, whether it be some of their top prospects or guys that are just going through things that need somebody to talk to, or coming back from injury, or just want to have a chat with us. We're just trying to help them out in the mental space more, and prepare them for, the challenges that are ahead. Whether some guys have never dealt with confidence bouts, some guys are going through some now, some guys are asked to play in different positions. Still a lot of players haven't played against older players yet, and what that entails, or going into a new locker room, or training with the twos, or training with the first team. Just things to think about, so that, trying to help set them up for success.
So that's to be fulfilling, like just, getting a call and talking to someone young. And, I know you just started this, but, in 5-10 years, you're going to see some of these guys going far, and that's going to have to be just make you feel great about it.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, Noah Cobb was one of the first guys. That was even before I started Beyond Goals. Just having conversations with him, and Tony Annan before he left, helped set that up. And he's obviously done really well, and he's an awesome kid. And yeah, no, I think that we were excited to do that. And I think that was kind of on the heels of one of the reasons why we started it was just because of our experience with the first batch of homegrowns, and both a combination of wishing we had maybe done more to help them and wishing that maybe they had more insight into what it was going to take to be good pros and earn a second contract.
So I want to kind of have you put your defender hat on, I guess, and kind of ask you a question about Atlanta United itself. And we've kind of seen some of the issues pop up. Late goals given up, mistakes being made in the back. We talk about the Cruz Azul match. Gonzalo Pineda saying literally it was a mistake. I guess two guys went for the same ball, and attacker left wide open on the left hand side. Brad really has no chance to make the save. And these issues that kind of pop up for Atlanta United, really match after match. What is that missing piece for them defensively from what you've seen that has caused them to become one of the teams in the league that has given up the most goals, has caused them to concede so many goals? And not just so many goals, but at late stages of the matches. Like, what is kind of your vantage point on that, and how does that get fixed, I guess?
Yeah. I think it's twofold for me. One is like the way that we used to play with Atlanta United during my years was we wanted to outscore teams, right? It was like we're cool winning a game 5-3 if that's what it takes to get 3 points. Like we'll just win 5-3 or win 5-2, right? And so some of that took pressure off us in the back because you knew, like, okay, one little mistake, right, that could possibly lead to a goal. If the mistake does happen, and if it does lead to a goal, right, and those are two big ifs, then it's okay because we're probably going to score multiple goals in this whatever said game it is, right? And so, I think when we're not in games, and I know we've scored a decent amount of goals this year as a team, right? But it's kind of been in clumps. And when that's not occurring, it's a little bit more pressure on the back line. But also, to be honest, it's just individually just seems like it hasn't been good enough, right? And I think that especially when Miles isn't in, the partnership hasn't been great between the Peralta and God, I'm blanking on the Chilean's name.
Abram.
Yeah.
I think Abram, for whatever reason, I haven't been impressed with him at all on the defensive side of the ball. And I know it's difficult when you go into a new country and you don't play right away, and you expect, I think, to play right away, and you're on the bench for a long time. Like, that's difficult. And then you get a couple chances and you get subbed into games. Like, I remember him subbing in against Nashville away. And I don't know how many minutes he played in the second half, but he was brutal. And that's tough. It's tough to get subbed in as a center back. It's a tough ask. And so I felt for him. But as an international, you also Peruvian, sorry. But as an international, you also expect a little bit more, right? And it's like, I think that there's been times where it's like, man, even in a 3-back, and obviously I'm not privy to what's going on in training, or how much they're training the 3-back system or the 5-back, whatever you want to call it. But it's just like I see some things where I'm like, this can't happen. Where guys are running in between little spaces and they're not getting covered, and two guys going for one, that type of stuff. So yeah, I don't know, it's a lack of ownership on the defensive side of the ball, like, and at times they're just getting left out to dry a little bit sometimes by the midfield in front of them.
Yeah, and it drives Brad absolutely nuts, right? When it happens, I mean, we see it all the time.
Yeah.
You hear Brad screaming, I'm sure, like to this day. I can only imagine, because, I mean, it's funny because you look at it from the top-down perspective, right? And you can see what's going on. But that's not always easily translatable to being on the pitch, right? But can you put your finger on something specifically? Because I've been shouting like from the rooftops on this show, the midfield needs help. The midfield like just doesn't pick up late runners. They don't seem to be doing the effort required of what is trying to be done as a cohesive unit. But I mean, am I off base? Like, what as a guy that did it all, like, what do you see that just it needs to be fixed?
Yeah, and I think that sometimes it's challenging, right? The way that Atlanta United plays, for the most part, even still today, it's still spread out, right? They're pressing a lot, and when you press at the bends, it's not only tiring because the field's big, but if it's not done well, like teams can play out of it. Like teams are good these days. They can play out of presses. They're prepared for the press, and the ball is so fast on that turf that like if the press isn't good, teams can play out of it. And that's no knock to the press, because even when we pressed in 17, 18, 19, like teams were playing out of it sometimes, right? It was a disaster sometimes. But we also had, myself and Jeff to organize things when things broke down, or, to help out and step into the midfield as a back three or as a number 6. Like Jeff, like covered so much ground, obviously, but also had the experience to read situations and foul guys and, all of that. So, some of it is that, and I don't think that, listen, we don't have a number 6 like Jeff. I know that Franco was playing well before he was traded. But even he, doesn't cover quite the ground that Jeff did. And I know that Ozzy was brought in to be that player, and obviously had the injury, and probably wasn't going to be quite that player just because of his age. So that's a big part of it. But when you ask the team to go press and you be spread out like that, it's gonna leave gaps. And the back line then has to make plays, and they have to be organized enough and take ownership to who's going to make the play and who's going to step up and who's going to do this and who's going to do that. Some of that takes time. It takes cohesiveness. It takes the same group playing together. It takes playing the same formation over and over. And it takes training it. We didn't even train that a lot with Atlanta United and until the playoffs leading up to MLS Cup and in 2018. And then that's why in the playoffs, our defense was so much better.
So really quick, I just got to ask, because I think that probably would shock some people to hear you say that, because a lot of times, like I'm at the training ground and we ask, Pineda, but you can ask probably, I think, any coach. And from the outside looking in, you would think they just need time. They just need to go to the training ground and hash it out and figure out what needs to be done. But like, it also feels like, and I've kind of felt this way for a little bit, but then maybe you reinforce it. If you've got the footballers that have that IQ, that know what the game plan is, and it's a clear cut, obvious game plan, a back line, not just that position, but a back line should be able to know their position well enough and know their team well enough to essentially operate as one unit, not as 3 individuals or 2, whatever. Right. Like I think that's worth maybe going a little bit more detail, because I think a lot of people just assume like, oh, this back line's been, Miles was hurt. Miles is out. Abram's coming in. He didn't play for the first part of the season. He's coming into a new country. Parada's the only one back there, but he's still on loan. Obviously, all those are factors, right? But should they be able to operate better than the sum of their parts right now?
Totally. For sure. I mean, I think that we'd all expect that, no doubt. I mean, this is not like a bunch of rookies on the back line, right? I mean, the 3 center backs are very well experienced. So there's that. Brooks is very well experienced, right? So, Caleb, when he's playing, is the least experienced, but he's not even playing a lot of left back these days. But I will say that a back four is a lot easier if you don't train a lot of defensive side of the ball. A back four is much easier because you've got your two center backs playing against a striker, and you've got your outside backs. They know that they're covering the wingers, right? It's like done and dusted. But then in a back five, the wing backs don't know sometimes, do I go to the outside back of the other team or do I cover the winger, right? And is the outside center back covering the winger, right? Or are they covering the striker? And that's why sometimes you get pinned back in a back five covering their front three. And that's how you get pinned back. And this happened with us when I was there, right? So it's never perfect. And the rotation has to be perfect of like when to release the wing back to go to their outside back, and the center back can slide out, right? And that's a lot of communication. When does one of the center backs step into the midfield to cover a guy because you might be outnumbered in the middle there, right? Those are little things that take a lot of communication and some experience and some ownership, honestly.
I'm curious. It's been Groundhog Day for this team for a while. Individual mistakes. I mean, it's been for basically since Pineda has come on, and it's not getting better. Does eventually that come on the coach?
I mean, it will, whether it should or it shouldn't, right. It will. I think anytime a team is not playing well, it's going to go back onto the coach, whether that's fair or not. And I will say that, Pineda's tried different things. He's tried different lineups. He's tried different formations. Has it all been perfect? Of course not. But I don't know. I really like Gonzalo as a person. I think he's an amazing human being, and I really like him. So, I hope that they figure things out, because I'd love to see him be there for a long time and have success with Atlanta. But that being said, like it's got to change soon. Like the team has spent too much money. The rosters, it's had some faults. There's no doubt, obviously, but it's still good enough to be not just a playoff team, but like have an actual chance of winning it, or at least going for a deep run. And it doesn't feel like we're there right now.
Yeah, and like they just keep. Whenever you have a coach in any sport, and after every press conference, after every game, they're repeating the same things. Like, we just have to stop making these individual mistakes. Your credibility starts going down when it's because it's not getting fixed every single week. And that's basically been almost every loss over the past few weeks. It's just one or two bad individual mistakes.
Yeah. And the other way to look at it is like some of these games we are playing well. Right, which is great, right? We're creating chances and looking pretty good offensively, and for the most part, doing the stuff defensively, right? And so that's what gives you the hope, and that's what's like, hey, if we can just do this little thing or that little thing, and it gets on the players too, right? Obviously, they feel for it too, and I'm sure a large majority, if not all, of the locker room respect and like Gonzalo and don't want him to get fired, and so they feel it on themselves too, right? And then I think the pressure mounts, right? And then you're like, I remember there were times in my career, especially like 2016 with the Crew. 2015 we lost an MLS Cup. 2016 we brought back basically the same team, if not even got a little bit better, and we could not win games. We just couldn't do it. We would dominate teams and lose, or play okay, and we just, all year long, it was the same thing. And the pressure mounts of like, God, it just seemed like every mistake you made as a defender, the other team was scoring, right? And it was like, and when things are going well, you can make 4 mistakes and they won't score a single goal, or Brad will play off, make every save possible, or they'll just miss the goal or hit the post, right? But it just seems when you're in that funk, those just doesn't happen. It's like that one mistake or the one thing, and it's like they're burying it. And I don't know why. It just feels like that's the way it's going right now. I feel for the guys sometimes.
Yeah, and sort of the messaging that we heard after the Cruz Azul match, Amar Sadech saying, that's football. I mean, that's a match where, kind of like what you were saying, Atlanta United looked a better team in the second half. Just that one mistake they made in the first half. I mentioned it earlier, where Cruz Azul goes up 1-0, attacker unmarked. Second half, they, of course, level the match, losing penalties, but frustrating things like that are what we're seeing from this team. When we look back and say, okay, if they hadn't given up that one goal, or if they hadn't broken down at that crucial moment, this would have been a much different result. And looking back at the end of the season, they're going to be kicking themselves, because how many matches could have been 3 points instead of 1, or 1 point instead of 0, if they just had held out for another 5 minutes. So, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and this isn't a conversation privy to Atlanta United, right? I mean, I'm up here in Columbus, and the Crew last year couldn't hold on to a lead in the 90th minute if their life depended on it. And they were a pretty good team as well, that just literally gave up a ton of goals in the 90th minute. So it happens to good teams sometimes, and it's not always the 90th minute, but and that's when like winning just covers things, right? It's like you win that game 2-1, or you even win in penalties, and it's like, all right, you kind of look past that one goal or that one mistake, and it's like, it's not that big a deal, right? But because we lost in penalties, and because we didn't advance, right, then it's like amplified, and that's just what losing and drawing games, especially at home, that's what it does.
Yeah, for sure. So, I know you're in the midst of building a team yourself, so you've had a little bit of a look behind the curtain from an administrative standpoint, player acquisition standpoint, and I want to kind of get your thoughts about how that applies to MLS as a whole. Of course, Inter Miami signed a pretty good player a few weeks ago, or several pretty good players a few weeks ago, but a lot of the conversation, in all seriousness, a lot of the conversation is, okay, now that Messi's in the league, MLS really needs to buckle down and take a close look at the roster roles and roster composition as it stands right now. And I think that becomes even more evident with Leagues Cup, MLS trying to get on par with Liga MX, trying to become competitive with them. So, from your vantage point, where do you see things from a roster building standpoint, especially with the World Cup coming in here, 2026, Copa America, the Club World Cup especially going to the U.S. in the next couple of years? How can MLS get to a point where their roster building mechanisms, their team building mechanisms can get them kind of on par with some of the other big leagues around the world, if not on par with Liga MX?
Yeah, and it's a great point, and it's one of the biggest reasons I think that a majority of the league was so excited to see, not only because he's the best player in the world, right, and to play against him, and obviously it's going to bring in a ton of new fans and revenue for sure. But when you look back, one of the best things that Beckham did to this league was change some of the rules. Obviously, he didn't do it, but his presence did it. And so if Messi's presence changes some of these rules, or gets the ownership or the league to change some of these rules faster than they would have, like, it's such a win for everybody. Like, I don't care if Miami signs half of Barcelona. If in order for them to do it, the league has to change the rules for everybody, then it's good for everybody. It is. And I think that, it's a bit of a joke that when, like, somebody like myself, who played in the league for 10 years, as part of MLSPA, can't easily understand all the rules and explain to other people what the rules are, then it's just too complicated. And so they need to get away with all the TAM, GAM buckets, and just, obviously raise the salary cap, allow more freedom to teams that want to go after it, and actually put together a solid roster, not just a top 15 guys, right? Which a lot of teams do and are kind of handicapped to do. But like when you look at Tigres, like I'm pretty sure Lucas Zelarayan was a role player for Tigres, I think, or a Mexican team, and he's so good, and we need to get to that level too, where we've got guys on the bench, and not just Atlanta, but throughout the league that are like good enough to start on every team in the league, if not, in other leagues. And we can't get there right now, just based off of the salary restrictions. And until that happens, I know that we've won Champions League now with Seattle, but to consistently compete with some of the top Mexican teams, I think that we're going to need to do that. And we want to do that. And I think there's owners, the newer owners want to do that. It's just that there's a few older owners who are holding the league back still because, they've got more clout. They've lost the most money in this league and kept it afloat in some hard times. And so obviously we're appreciative of that, but they also need to realize that the league wants to take off and they're kind of holding it back right now. And so I think they will change it this year. I think they need to, especially with the World Cup coming, only one full two full seasons, before that World Cup. So, all eyes will be on American soccer. And so now's the time for sure.
Yeah. And once you get towards, the schedule congestion, it gets sloppy. Right? Like you don't have a lot of great players that you could put in. You see a lot of twos players in there and it's great, but with more eyes on the league, and especially, if Miami's playing a midweek game here and everybody's watching Messi and they're, a team's resting a bunch of their players, they're not putting a lot of quality guys out there.
Yeah.
That's when you get all these videos, which you already saw when Miami destroyed Atlanta United. MLS is trash. This is where we're at. Like you could tell how bad this league is. You've got to get, the world is watching right now, like you said, and you've got to just get better quality here.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, they have to. And I think they understand that. I think they know that. And, and like I said, that'll be the best thing. It's funny. We've worked so hard as a players association to fight for some rules. And then, Beckham comes in and we get DPs and COVID hits and all of a sudden we've got charter flights and hopefully now Messi comes in and it's like, these are things we fought for years, never got anything. And it's like, oh, Beckham gets this. Oh, okay. Because of COVID. Okay. Oh, all of a sudden we can fly charters all the time. Okay, cool. Right. And it's like, yeah, fine. If Messi coming in is going to tilt the board a little bit towards Miami, don't care, as long as all these changes come in for everybody and help out everybody in the long run.
And it should too, right? Because MLS, I think the argument is always, well, we want parity. We want things to be close. We don't want it to be a, Man City type, Premier League or Barcelona, Real Madrid type La Liga.
Yeah.
But if you don't allow things to open up, I think to a degree, then you're kind of going backwards. Actually, I think you're really like, yeah, it may look good for Miami the first couple of years. It's fine. You have Messi, you have the best player in the world. But if you're not then allowing the teams that Messi's playing against to fight back in a sense, then the worldwide audience that you're gaining isn't going to stick around. They're not going to want to see a subpar product by the time Messi leaves in a couple of years. So yeah. I think that's the other, I think my only counter argument is, yeah, you've got to open it up at some point. And if there's a time to strike while the iron's hot, this is it.
Totally. And, nobody wants this to turn into the Scottish League, right? Where you've got two giants and the rest of them are just like trash.
Yeah, for sure.
No offense to the other Scottish teams. Or even, the Bundesliga in the past few years has gotten better, but you know what I'm saying, right? We don't want the top heavy and the bottom where it's like, you've got the team that's never going to be in the top half or things like that. And that's where you can, put a floor in for spending, right? And or something where it's like, keep a gap. And I'm not saying get rid of and I don't think it ever will get rid of a salary cap completely, but just having a more flexibility within the salary cap.
So I kind of wanted to, well, actually, let me ask you this first. With your new venture with Rhode Island, are you having to deal with any of the same kind of stuff, or are they fairly free with your ability to go out and get players?
Yeah, pretty free.
Really?
Yeah, pretty free, which is nice. There's no, I mean, there's, a capped number of foreigners, but there's no cap or anything. There's no buckets of money or anything. And, we're free to go get any MLS player, USL player, foreign player. So that part makes it a lot easier when you're trying to plan and, have an idea of where you want to spend your money and how you want to spend it.
And it's going to be in League One?
The USL Championship.
It is going to be championship. Okay.
Yeah.
So just really quickly, how has the conversation, because you're still in the development of this team, and now they're talking about adding promotion and relegation. What has kind of been y'all's thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's exciting. I think that it's still a little bit a ways away. I think this vote that's occurring soon is just to vote on if it's still worth exploring even deeper. Meaning if they do the exploring and find out that it's good and it's great, are we going to have enough votes to even pass it? Otherwise, we're not going to spend the money to explore it further. So I'd envision that they'll get the votes and that they'll explore this further with the hopes of implementing it before the World Cup at some point. I think that, that's one of the benefits of not having, and the fees for USL Championship are moving up for sure, right? But it's not going to happen within MLS where you've got a franchise fee of $500 million and you could get relegated after 1 year and, go down and play USL Championship teams, right? It's unrealistic. So USL's got the best chance of implementing a system like that, especially if they grow the championship currently to 30 teams and then split that into 2 or something like that. Right. Because some of the League One teams probably aren't at the place where they could get promoted and, sustain that. So, I think that's what they'd have to try and do.
Yeah, I think if that goes through, I think you'll get a lot more eyes on the USL. And maybe, right now they're with ESPN Plus, I believe. I could be wrong, but maybe more opportunities with television and media attention on the league. So, we'll have to see what comes of that. Real quick, and going to try to wind it down in just a little bit. We can't let you go without talking about the Women's World Cup. I mean, you have a daughter, I'm sure, is very into it, I'm sure. But group stage is over. Knockout stage is coming out on Saturday against Sweden, a very formidable opponent. Have you had a chance to watch a lot of it yourself, and what have been your impressions of what you've seen thus far? And what are the U.S.'s chances of making it maybe to a third straight title?
Yeah, I've watched the first 2 games. I did not wake up at 3 a.m. for this past game.
Can't say I blame you.
Yeah, me neither.
But, I think that I get some of the chatter that I'm seeing and hearing about their play. It hasn't been clear. Obviously, the first game is a far inferior opponent. It's too easy. Obviously they should have scored probably 8 goals. And they didn't. They just weren't sharp enough in front of the goal. And that happens sometimes. You get it. But I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous going into this last game. And I know that the women caught some heat for after the Portugal game, kind of celebrating a little bit or dancing a little bit. And for me, my take on that is I have no problem with it. It's tough to it's tough to advance out of the group stage in the World Cup. It's obviously their goal is to win the championship because that's their level. But step one of that is to get out of the group, and they got out of the group. And was it perfect? Nope. Does it make their road probably a little bit harder? Yeah. But if they're the best team in the world, then it doesn't matter. And like some of their stuff about like, their swag and their style and they're taking the pictures before the game and stuff, I have no problem with that, right? As long as like when it's time to show up and play, that they are the typical US women's team that has got not only the swagger, but like that killer mentality of like, we are going to destroy you. We're going to score goals, like, and we're going to bury you. And so obviously we didn't see that against Portugal from, what I've caught up on afterwards. So that, and in a kind of a big game, all right. If that ball hits off the post and goes in, right, they're out. I do expect that they'll rebound. I think that they know that they haven't played their best, and right, you get out of the group stage not having played your best, right? I look at that as maybe I'm just a positive person, right? But I kind of look at the bright side, right? You haven't played your best yet, and you're going to the group stage. Not having Rose Lavelle hurts. She's a baller. I think, Alex Morgan needs to step up. She needs to be a leader on this team that she is, and they need to be able to rely on her to, not only hold up the balls, but she needs to score. And so that's got to happen if we're going to have success, we're going to win. I do think that they'll have a good performance against Sweden. I feel good about it. I am going to wake up at 5 and watch that game. It's a big one. So I'm excited for it.
And then just super quick, Republic of Ireland make it to the World Cup for the first time. So I'm sure you're happy to see that as well.
Totally. Absolutely. Love a good Irish presentation there at the World Cup. And honestly, it's been an exciting World Cup. There's been a lot of upsets, and seeing Jamaica get through yesterday was awesome. The Panama goal against France. It's just like, some of these CONCACAF teams doing well. It's awesome. And
Brazil
some of these
getting knocked out.
Sorry?
Brazil getting knocked out.
Yeah, Brazil getting knocked out, and and even Norway had a tough time. And who else got knocked out? Somebody else big got knocked out.
Oh, we were just talking about it earlier, and I just had it pulled up. Come on, y'all help me out. Dadgummit, it's gonna.
I'm looking it up.
I wake up for the U.S. only.
Canada. Canada was a
Canada. Yeah,
that was a big one.
A big team, and so. It's been a fun World Cup for sure. It's been exciting. And so, obviously anything can happen here, but I haven't lost faith. Am I more nervous than I would be if they went 3-0 in the group? Of course. But, Holland's no joke. At least they turned it around and took it to them in the second half. So that was good. And hopefully they'll bring out that killer instinct here for against Sweden.
All right. So, just a couple of quick things to wrap it up, because I know you're super busy, want to be, responsible with your time and everything for sure. You said you're up in Columbus right now, right? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
I never know, man. Rhode Island, Atlanta. You come back down to Atlanta anytime soon?
I had Julian over for dinner last week. He's as well.
And then he went out and had a killer game.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, as expected.
So I guess that ties into this question, because everybody's always asking it. How much money do we need to pay you to come back to help out?
Tell you what, I could not help out the defense right now. I guess maybe as a coach I could, but not as a player. But coaching's not in my near-term future. That's for sure. It's too demanding. Too much time away from the family. That's not what I'm looking to do right now.
Totally understand. So then I just got to ask, because I obviously see you on Soccer Down Here, Jason's show. John's doing everything with it. And it may have been asked on there. I don't get to watch them all the time, especially now that we're doing this. The ball that you have behind you, what's the significance?
So this ball is Olympics.
Okay.
So that's 2008 Olympics. And then the other ball is first professional game with New England, signed by the guys.
Nice. Okay.
Yes.
Always wondered. It's always been bugging me. It wouldn't make sense to ask you on like Twitter Spaces because nobody can see it, but I had to ask now.
Yeah, and then the field behind me is a teammate of mine at Wake Forest. That's a picture of Spry Stadium at Wake Forest, and then kind of a quote here on the side that he made it. And it's like saying like the real education we got was right here on the field.
That's awesome.
Like that. So it's a cool picture.
Sweet. How often? Yeah, just real quick. How often do you get back down to Winston-Salem in the Carolinas? Pretty often, or?
Definitely once a year. Try and get down twice a year, but definitely get down in the fall to see a game. If not for homecoming, then catch a game at some point. They always have a good team, and I'm very close with Bobby Muse, the head coach down there. So at least once a season.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, nice area down there. You know, as a former Charlotte resident, can speak to the beauty of the Carolinas. And then Coach B saying, "Parkhurst, please sign my jersey." So I don't know who that is. Friend of yours or?
Nope, big fan down here.
Oh, just a big fan. Here in the chats.
I don't know. No, I don't think any meet and greets really on the docket right now. I'll be down in a few weeks to do some stuff with the academy, and then I always do the Thanksgiving camps down in Atlanta.
Yeah,
with, Kevin Kratz and Mike Ambrose and Greg Garza, Alec Can. So we do those Thanksgiving camps. So that might be a good opportunity as well.
Yeah,
Parky, up north, I'm a couple hours above you in Cleveland.
Oh yeah,
they've got a USL and NWSL team they're working on here too.
Yes, I did see that. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're trying to grow it in Ohio.
Yeah, soccer is spreading like wildfire.
Crazy. But two of the newest and best stadiums in MLS are both in Ohio, or two of them are in Ohio.
Yeah,
they're both beautiful.
Yeah, they are. They are beautiful grounds. But it is spreading, and 2026 will be here before you know it. Mike, really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Open invite. You're welcome back anytime. But appreciate your insight. Appreciate your time, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds good, gents. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
See you, fellas.